The views and opinions expressed in the following paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners. Welcome to Straight Talk and Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice in making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 314-931-5877 or text your question to 84126.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement. You're live and local, St. Louis's favorite and longest-running financial call-in show. I'm Jeff Lapidus with JBL Financial Services. I'm a 40-year veteran of the financial services area, a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager. And I'm joined by my crew, my oldest prodigal daughter, Aaron Lapidus, who is the president of our company, a certified financial planner, and also one of my favorite daughters.
One of your favorite daughters?
Absolutely. And also we're joined by Robert Markham, my son-in-law, our newest wealth manager, and also our life insurance and fixed annuity sales specialist. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. We help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a real game plan, a step-by-step strategy that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate.
Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one they can count on, so they can do all the things they want to do in retirement.
Third is cost-effectively addressing their healthcare needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to couple with their Medicare coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, without Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, Aaron, Rob, and I watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Folks, again, good morning. Thanks so much for taking your time and tuning into our 2-hour show. We have a lot of fun things to talk about. What's more important is what's on your mind. Pick up the phone, give us a call, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the KTRS text line.
You know, Dad.
Yeah, babe.
You're my favorite dad.
Well, thank you.
I think you're one of my favorite dads now. I have a father-in-law too.
Oh, very nice.
I thought you were going to say like Tony Danza or something, like favorite TV dad or among various dads.
Tony Danza.
I think she's a little young for that. You watch Who's the Boss?
Of course I was not. My goodness. I mean, I am too young for that, but I did see it in reruns, of course.
Yeah, I saw the originals.
Judith Light and everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Judith Light. Now, there's a blast from the past.
Right. But no,
Absolutely.
father-in-laws, they're great too. But, you know, I did want to make mention today we're doing something a little different at the top of the second hour. We have a guest. We haven't had a guest on in over 13 years, as long as I've been here. But with all of the changes that are upcoming to Medicare in the 2025 plan year, we've decided that we are going to invite on Barry Streit. He's a Senior VP of Growth at Essence Healthcare, so one of our regional partners, local player, and we're going to discuss not only what's coming up, but, you know, what Essence has in store for all of us.
And that should be a lot of fun. And that'll come at the top of the hour, or the top of the second hour. And just as a reminder, all of our clients are folks like you. There are listeners, they're 55 and older. They would like to retire, or they're already retired. And as Aaron mentioned, our goal is to create a game plan for them so they can have a fun, financially successful, and worry-free, we hope, retirement.
That's right, and we already queued up our first Medicare question of the morning. Can you speak about all the Medicare Advantage plans eliminating all the extras due to costs? I would just say I have not heard that is going to be the case.
And we don't know what's going to be added or eliminated yet because we don't have eyes on the new plans yet.
Right.
And if we did, we're not allowed to talk about them anyways until the beginning of October.
That's also true. That is also true, but we've heard that there will be changes. We have not heard that is going to be the change. So, empirically, the extra benefits available through the Medicare Advantage plans are one of the main marketing tools that Essence, United, Aetna, all of the major carriers use to help entice enrollees onto their plans, because the benefit differentials really are generally not as significant, as we all know, because everything has to emanate from Medicare, so they have to take those cues from what Medicare benefits are required to provide, which gives them latitude to have plan differences, as we all know, network differences, formulary differences, meaning what prescriptions are available on each plan, but the benefits themselves really can't widely vary, which is why if you saw, maybe a Medicare Advantage plan didn't do as well one year to the next, you don't all of a sudden see your copay to the primary care doctor at $75, so they can try to make up costs because they still have to stay within the rules and regulations of what Medicare requires.
And on that note, I mean, even the fitness allowance that was amended by, I believe it was Aetna, that didn't come from Aetna. It wasn't like Aetna was like, well, we're losing a whole bunch of money, as CMS came in and said, hey, look, you're not going to be doing that. So
right, you stepped a little outside the bounds.
So let's not get too far out in front of the parade, I guess, when it comes to all the changes, because, they'll be here soon enough, and, we will dive in at that time.
Yep.
Well, the nice thing is that we know generally when the insurance companies giveth, they're reluctant to take away. I think from any point of view, you'll do that. But taking advantage of the plans that you have, no matter what the benefits are, is really what this show's about.
Absolutely.
And we'll have an opportunity to talk in depth with somebody who works for one of the plans today. We hope you'll stay tuned in with us to do that.
That's right. And there are many ways that you can keep in contact with us throughout the week, not just on our show Saturday mornings, but you can log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the Contact Us button and request a coaching session, financial, Medicare, or both. On the lower left-hand side of the screen, you can click the pop-up box that appears that says sign up for our monthly newsletter. We call it the Coach's Corner, and Rob keeps it updated for us every single month. We're already in the second weekend of June, so why don't you give us a nice recap of what our June newsletter looks like this month?
And our first article in the June 2024 newsletter is Financial Regrets. Do you have them? If so, you're not alone. 3 out of 4 adults, according to a recent survey, have them. And the most common ones, taking on too much credit card debt and not saving enough for retirement. And it's got a great little infographic there that not only breaks down financial regrets, but breaks them down by age group. So, millennials have different regrets than Gen Xers. Gen Xers tend to have a little bit different ones than, say, baby boomers. So it's a little bit interesting to dive in and see what decisions people would like to have back.
If you happen to be looking at your infographic, the one I wanted to key on today was not saving for retirement early enough. And if we look at that, it looks as though millennials have the most regret at 35%, Gen X second, and then baby boomers third, down at less than 10%. And I think that is primarily a function of all of the literature that is available to individuals and all of the noise around retirement planning and saving for retirement, because we have found that most individuals, even baby boomers, weren't saving for retirement until they got to their late 40s into their 50s, because you're just starting out when you're millennials are essentially in the second decade of their career, or at least getting into the second decades of their career at this point. They have a lot of pulls on their income, starting families, maybe purchasing homes, lower incomes because you're just starting out in the workforce. So you don't have the opportunity to save as much and ramp up those savings until you get a couple decades into your working career. That doesn't necessarily mean you're not saving for retirement. It just means you're saving at a much slower clip. So we can see that once you've crossed over, because we're seeing many baby boomers are still in the process of retiring. I know Barry will probably talk about this on the show today, which is we are seeing more individuals turning 65 this year and in the upcoming year than we ever have in the past. It's something like 12,000 a week are turning 65 every single month or every single week in this country alone. So we can see that as people are getting closer to retirement, they're seeing that, hey, when they ramped up their savings as they got older, they really were able to close that gap over time. Whereas millennials still have a little bit longer to go.
And there's some things that millennials and Gen Xers may not be able to take advantage of, like, for instance, the catch-up provisions. I mean,
Right.
you can't do that when, you're 35. You can only do that when you're on the, as I like to say, the right side of 50. So, if you have a 401k, now you're able to save, upwards of $30,000 rather than 23 or 24. And your IRA's contributions, you can throw an extra $1,000 into that. So, I mean, again, there are things that are going to help you along in your savings journey, but they're just not available to you because of age-based restrictions.
Exactly.
I have a slightly different view on this.
Oh, yeah. I'm not shocked, as you are the baby boomer in the room.
Exactly. The Gen Xers, the youngsters,
Well, those are people just a little older
that's
than
my
Rob.
cohort.
Yeah.
the youngsters,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know what they don't know.
And the millennials know even less.
And the millennials know what they think they know what they know, but they really, in most cases, they haven't really taken the time to do the measuring, doing the financial calculation of, do I have enough? Have I created enough to retire? Because they're getting inundated with all these, I call it financial pornography, the commercials, the calculators, etc. So they're like afraid they're not going to have enough.
Mm-hmm.
The baby boomers, they're already there. We didn't know what we didn't know because they didn't start IRAs until 1990. 401ks were really not that prevalent. So baby boomers, when they've gotten there, they go, you know what? I'm okay. Or I'm never going to be okay. It's either A or B. So a lot of this is time. A lot of this is obviously the time to accumulate money. Savings is always a good thing, but what's more important, I think, is that most folks don't have people they can turn to, advisors, that can help them do this future forecasting and really give them a true sense of where they are and say, hey, these are some of the things you need to think about, you need to tweak, whether it's dealing with maybe eliminating debt. Am I increasing my contributions to my plan? Am I taking advantage of the plans I have now, as an example? HSAs. Do I have an HSA eligible health plan? Could I be socking more money away if I want to do it that way? Is it better for me to do Roth or to do traditional? I mean, not having what you don't know is usually what gets you into trouble or doesn't help you get to where you want to go as quickly. So having advice is kind of important. So financially, I have no regrets. Because I'm staring across the table at my retirement plan. Thank you, babe.
And
as one of your favorite daughters, happy to help.
Thank you.
And our next article is near and dear to Jeff's heart. Should you buy or lease your next vehicle? New vehicle prices have skyrocketed. I don't have to tell the listeners that. They already know. The average cost now is over $48,000. That's crazy. Those costs coupled with high interest rates mean that the new vehicle you want could take a significant bite out of your budget. This article lays out some fundamental things to consider before you buy or lease. From mileage to maintenance, this article is covering all the bases. And our next article, Saving for College, 529 plans versus Roth IRAs. This is an interesting article because it compares which vehicles are best when saving for and paying for college expenses. The plans differ in some important ways. 529 plans can be opened by anyone. Not anyone can contribute to a Roth IRA. You have to have earned income to contribute to a Roth, and even then, there are income limitations. 529 plans were specifically designed for college savings and expenses, whereas Roth IRAs are primarily a retirement savings vehicle with a college expense provision. This is an informative article giving you insights into both options. And our last article, the Birthday Benefits Quiz. This one is designed to help you understand the legal changes associated with birthdays after 50 years old. When you got your license, you remember when you got your license at 16, or you could vote in your first election at 18? Take advantage of the full fruits of adulthood at 21. If you thought you were done with age-based legal changes after 21, you're in for a surprise. And I'll just give you a little hint. Well, what is the age in which one is able to make catch-up provision contributions to a retirement plan?
Oh, this is a great question because you already had the answer for us earlier.
50 years old.
That's right.
So there are 10 in all. Definitely some fun ones you can test your knowledge base against. And that is your 2024 newsletter. And remember, we keep, I think there's like a year and a half of archived newsletters on there. So if you like what you've heard, go in there, dive in, and check out some of the other articles.
You got a year and a half's worth of content to peruse. And with that, people are raring to go this morning. We have our first caller on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. Could I confirm with you, too? I heard yesterday that I can combine funds in a SEP IRA with a traditional IRA to reduce the amount of accounts that I have.
Are you currently contributing to your SEP IRA?
No, no longer.
If you're no longer contributing, then yes, you are eligible to combine a SEP IRA with a traditional IRA because those are both pre-tax accounts. The only reason why you wouldn't want to combine is because if you were still making SEP IRA contributions, that has a much higher limit than a traditional IRA would on an annual basis.
Understand. Okay. Any cons for that?
No.
Okay.
None whatsoever. The big deal, as Aaron was saying, is it's a matter of whether the SEP IRA is active. If you have earned income, if you have earned income, you obviously can put up to 25% into a SEP, whereas your IRA contribution limits are basically $7,000. So if you're not actively working, earning income, then it's not a bad idea to combine these two. Do you mind my asking your age?
I am 73 and retired 2 years ago.
Okay, so you're stuck with required minimum distributions as well. So I would certainly recommend that unless you have different investment objectives within these two plans or invested a little bit differently and you're doing that on purpose, there's no reason not to combine them because, as you know, you're required to take a minimum distribution between the total of the two of them.
Correct.
So save yourself some paper and maybe a $25 or $30 custodial fee every year.
Right.
There you go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right, because when you combine those two types of accounts, they're going to be combined into a traditional IRA versus a SEP IRA. You won't be importing the IRA into the SEP. You'll be doing the reverse, essentially, which means that if you have earned income, our caller didn't, that you'd be limiting yourself from that 25% that you can put in all the way down to $7,000 plus the $1,000 catch up if you're over the age of 50.
Easy.
That's right.
Easy,
and also
easy.
you could, down the line, you could modify your investment objectives, or if one was more aggressive, one less aggressive, you could moderate that based on account size when they're combined. Just depends upon who you're working with and where the money's held.
Yeah, all these plans, and all these company retirement plans, whether it's a SEP, a 401k, 403b, 457, these are really IRAs waiting to happen. And when you stop your active participation in the plan, they literally become IRAs for you. With a SEP as compared with the SEP versus 401k, et cetera, you don't have to roll a SEP into an IRA. It already is one. Whereas a 401k, 403b, you need to roll that into an IRA so that the IRA distribution rules are available to you. And more importantly, the vehicle is set up to make distributions. 401ks are really accumulation vehicles. They're not income vehicles. So that's good. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the KTRS text line. And while we're waiting for your calls and your texts, before we let's do something before we take our first break. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay. Last week, and we've been talking about this. I think it's really, I want to say 2 to 3 times a month. We talk a little bit about the Secure Act, which is really probably the most significant change that's happened, in our opinions, in the tax law in the last 25 years. And again, the Secure Act really discussed the changing of the status of IRAs, the creation of, not that inherited IRAs weren't created, but the fact is the distribution rules have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been looking at the differences, and Rob's been doing a little bit of research, and we've been having some situations. And so let's talk a little bit about what the distinct differences are between the old rules and the new rules.
Well, they've certainly added some color and begun to amend the Secure 2.0 Act. And, we've talked about many times, these rules changes surrounding inherited IRAs they've been a game changer. And inheriting IRAs between spouses and now non-spouses are now significantly different. Starting this year, if a spouse inherits an IRA, they can delay the RMD distributions until the deceased RMD age or their own. If the deceased spouse has already begun taking RMD distributions, they must satisfy that year's RMDs, but then they can decide how they want to continue, either with the deceased RMD schedule or their own. So, that's a nice change.
So give us an example of how this might work.
Well, that brings us right to Mary. Mary is a client of ours. She's 62 years old, and she has to decide what to do with her husband Terry's IRA. And, his IRA had about $800,000 in it, and he was 72 years old, so he was set to begin taking his RMDs next year. And when we reviewed her cash flow needs, we realized she didn't need the distributions from his IRA to make her life work. So, we began to discuss, what are her options with this IRA? And, there is a special provision in there between spouses that you can combine your husband or your wife's IRA with your own. Non-spouses don't have that option. So if Mary did combine the IRA with her own, she could now delay taking those RMDs until she's 73, which is huge.
That's a 10-year difference in terms of when you're forced to start taking money. It really changes the amortization schedule of those distributions. It won't change the overall amount because you're still, when we get 10 years down the line, you'll still have that total dollar amount that the family combined, but you'll get to delay it if you want to.
Absolutely. And say I were to inherit my dad's IRA, I would have to, I wouldn't have the option of importing it into my own. I would have to set up a beneficiary IRA in which I would be subject to a 10-year liquidation rule. Mary, being that she's the spouse, she gets the added rider of being able to import it into hers and being able to bypass all that. So, that in and of itself is huge, because why do you want to pay taxes on money that, you don't need?
Absolutely.
So let's stop here. So what we're talking about is Mary's over 59 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So she's eligible to make distributions.
Without the 10% penalty.
Without the 10% penalty, but she can delay as long as she wants or until she reaches her normal requirement
of distribution age,
which is at 73. So she can do what she wants in the middle because she's, as we say, grown up enough to be past that 10% penalty. And that gives her obviously a lot of flexibility. But what if she wasn't 59 and a half? That really creates a whole different kind of planning thought process and structure, right?
It does. And in the case of not being 59 and a half, how are we going to get those distributions and not pay that penalty really becomes the question.
Well, and I also think there's a few planning things that you want to leave doors open down the road. We talked about Mary not needing the income from Terry's IRA right now. but what if she needs a little bit of income before she gets to 59 and a half? If we import all of Terry's IRAs into Mary's, she's got to wait till 59 and a half. She's closed all of her doors, essentially.
Well, the deal's over.
Right.
What if we just left it in her husband's name and just took the RMDs? So we satisfy the RMD schedule
for this year, or for the upcoming year.
For this year and the upcoming ones until she reaches 59 and a half, and then we explore the options of importing it into her own, because she'll be over 59 and a half at that point, in which case the 10% penalty no longer applies.
And we can even get very specific about this, meaning, Terry had about $800,000 in IRA assets. We can determine how much Mary needs and only leave that correlating amount in Terry's IRA, meaning she only has to take the income that's required, which also equals what she needs, and import the balance into her IRAs, meaning she doesn't have to take that. So, for example, if she only
we're basically talking about doing a tax-free but partial transfer. So let's use it. Let's do a dollar. Let's do a dollar number.
Okay.
Terry's, again, based on Terry's age, her husband's. 800,000. She would, in theory, have to take about 32,000 if she were just to leave it in there. But let's assume that she really didn't need 32,000. Let's assume she wanted 24,000 or 2,000 a month. Well, that means that really his IRA size that's left would be 600,000, right? 4%.
So we could move 200 into hers,
right?
Split off the other.
Leave the 600 in his, only now creating his RMD being the 24,000 that she needs every year.
Right.
What wouldn't make a lot of sense, in my view, would be to create a beneficiary IRA.
Which is a new provision that the Secure 2.0 Act has created for spouses. It always existed for non-spouses, like you mentioned, Rob. If your dad were to pass away, or if you inherit an IRA from a non-spouse, you have to create a beneficiary IRA.
No other way.
The Secure 2.0 Act offered the opportunity for spouses to create beneficiary IRAs. However, you're still going to be subject to that 10% or that 10-year distribution pattern.
Yeah, I like the idea of leaving it in the husband or the wife's name and, like you said, splitting off what you need. And then when you get on the right side of 59 and a half, you can decide what option you want to explore. But once you cross that bridge and you set up the beneficiary IRA, there's no going back. You forced to liquidate it in 10 years, and that may or may not be the wisest thing to do, because you foreclosed other options that would have otherwise been open to you.
It just gives you a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, and I think the big deal here is, it's very difficult to see what's going to happen in the future. 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5, 10 years. So understanding your numbers and your needs, especially with surviving spouses, it takes time.
Right.
To really figure it out once the dust is settled. How much income do I need to make my lifestyle work based on where I am today? What's neat is that in this particular case that we're talking about, we know that in the date of death, because Terry was old enough to take, or assuming he was old enough to take a required minimum distribution, it had to be done, in theory, let's say this year. If he's not old enough, we know that a required minimum distribution would have to be taken next year. So you've got yourself at least 12 months to either do something or do nothing. You can do nothing and wait and kind of see, and as we talked about, kind of make that IRA back to where you want it to be, whether you're keeping it in your deceased spouse's name or you're combining it with yours. Planning. We're not really talking about where the money's invested, rates of return, etc. That's really not germane. What's germane here is getting the tax part right.
Because some things are irreversible, essentially.
Yes.
And here we are talking about the Secure 2.0 Act that was passed 4 years ago, and they're still adding color to what they really meant. It's one thing to pay. And, if you're not sitting down with a professional that, is abreast and up on all these things, it's very, very easy to get lost in the weeds. And this is another reason why before you do something that can't be undone, you really want to sit down with a financial professional, I think.
And before we take our first break of this hour, let's get to our next text question. Our next phone call. I apologize.
Very good. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Kim, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I am.
Okay.
I got a little situation. I want to see if I'm on the right track.
Perfect.
I'm 66 years old. When I turned 65, I signed up for Medicare Part A, but I declined the Part B because I retired from the federal government and I got to keep my insurance through them, paying my fair share. Now, when my wife, who's younger, turns 65, we can both sign up for TRICARE for life because I'm retired military too.
That's heaven.
And we can suspend or my federal insurance. Now, from what I understand, I will not get penalized at that time she turned 65. And then once we do TRICARE for life, we have to pay for Part B.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. You're using your federal benefits right now until your wife turns 65. When she turns 65 and has her initial election into Medicare, you're going to have a special election into Medicare by leaving the federal plan, joining Medicare, and then utilizing TRICARE for life as your supplement essentially to your Medicare benefits.
Now, do you think that would be a better deal for us to do TRICARE for life and suspend or my federal insurance, which is through United Healthcare?
Well, I know that the federal benefits are going to, you're maintaining a premium like you mentioned. TRICARE for Life has no additional premium, and you are even eligible to add a Medicare Advantage plan to your TRICARE for Life benefits, which means you can almost triple up your coverage. You've got Medicare, you have TRICARE for Life, and then you can also utilize a Medicare Advantage plan if you'd like, which will add additional benefits for you that TRICARE doesn't necessarily offer, and you'll be able to choose what is the most cost-effective benefit for you. It won't turn off your TRICARE benefits. You'll actually be able to enhance them. I would definitely take the opportunity when your wife gets closer to 65 to sit down with someone and kind of review your benefit options, so that way you know exactly what you're leaving and what you're getting into. But I do think it is it would be a very viable option to let go the federal benefits. I know they aren't inexpensive, and utilize the benefits that you earned through TRICARE.
Yeah, thank you. And one more thing is, if I do the TRICARE for life, and someone told me since I'm retired military, I could sign up for the Medicare Patriot plan, and they would pay $100 of the Plan B.
That's great. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because you had mentioned, I remember hearing in your discussion earlier, you were talking about dental. Dental is what I thought I heard you say dental, but
I don't think so. But dental will be added in with the Medicare Advantage plans.
Exactly. And so the dental benefits, some of the other wellness benefits, since there isn't anything better than TRICARE for life, what you're really looking at is supplementing with maybe some of these optional benefits that are available through the Medicare Advantage plans.
It also could expand your network of physicians available to you.
Exactly.
And the good thing is, what I understand, if I'm not happy with the TRICARE, I can go back. I can go back to the federal insurance.
Yeah, you'll be happy as pie, though. But
thank you for calling.
Thank you so much. That was a great question, and obviously we appreciate your service, which is an important one too for all veterans. I think we ought to take our first break of the hour. We're pretty close here for the first 40 minutes.
That sounds good.
So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on Retirement after these messages.
Is it time to replace that old worn-out flooring? Shop the city and save at JJS Flooring. JJS offers a wide variety of options that will surely meet your flooring needs.
We tried shopping the big box stores, and that was useless. So we decided to head to JJS, and wow, I'm glad we did. Dennis and Sean were so helpful and knowledgeable. They told us what would work in what room and what wouldn't. They have over 40 years of experience in flooring. That's all they do is flooring. And save? Yes, we saved a ton, and our house looks amazing now. New hardwoods in the living room and tile in the kitchen and bath? Thank you, JJS.
See the ultra soft carpets from Stanton, truly the softest carpet on the market, and it's backed by the legendary Stainmaster warranty.
Check out the engineered hardwood starting at $1.60 a square foot. JJS is looking to add experienced floor layers to its team. Find them at 2301 Gravois Avenue, just west of Hodax. See what JJS can do for you. Their service will floor you.
Pasiglia, the premier nursery and garden center in Wildwood, invites you to a concert in the garden, Thursday, June 13th at 6 p.m. Enjoy a free concert from the Inside Out Band and Cash Bar from Wildwood Pub and Grill, plus an exclusive opportunity to shop with a special coupon for the nursery to enjoy savings on purchases. Sit back, relax, shop, sip, and soak up the beauty of the nursery while listening to some of your favorite tunes. Reserve your spot at pasiglia.com. Pasiglia's Nursery and Garden Center.
Looking for the perfect summer getaway? Dive into luxury with poolside cabana rentals this summer at Camden on the Lake Resort, located in the Lake of the Ozarks. Available 7 days a week with special weekday pricing that will make your stay even sweeter. Sip on tropical drinks by the pool and soak up the sun at our beautiful newly renovated resort. Don't miss out on the ultimate poolside experience. Book your cabana rental today at CamdenOnTheLake.com or 573-365-5620, where paradise is just a splash away.
Joy to the world, the Father's born. Let me receive great gift.
Think your dad is the best in the Lou?
That's right.
Go to KTRS.com and look for the Father's Day promotion slider to nominate your dad and tell us why he deserves to be recognized.
Good morning, son.
5 lucky dads will win a $100 prize sponsored by Cardinal Nation and Four Seasons Country Club. Go to KTRS.com now and show dear old dad some love.
Thank you.
Winners announced throughout the day this Friday. And happy Father's Day.
Go!
From the Big 550 KTRS.
Clean up on aisle 7.
Irv, we were never in aisle 7. I'm telling you, honest.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talking Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, welcome back to the show. It's 9:42 here on the Big 550 KTRS. I'm Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach.
I'm Aaron Lapidus, the retirement coach.
And I'm Robert Markham, your life insurance and fixed annuity sales specialist.
And we are willing, waiting, and wanting to take your questions at 314-931-5877 or your text messages, 84126 from the KTRS text line. And so while we're waiting for these to fill up, we've had a bunch of calls this morning, which has been fun. Obviously, the text line has been a little slow this morning.
They're just all waiting for the top of the next hour.
I don't blame them. We talked in our last segment. We talked a little bit about the Secure Act and the changes that have happened in regard to IRAs and the distribution of IRAs to spouses. But for the case of non-spouses, which could be children, aunts or uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, whoever it would be, somebody that isn't a spouse, the rules are different. So let's go through an example. I spoke to Tom the other day. He's a client of ours. His mom, who was a client, recently passed away at 92. And he has a couple of siblings, and they've inherited approximately $300,000 from mom, $100,000 each, nice round number. His first question was, how does the process work of transferring the money from mom to us? Second question was, can I add this to my current IRA, etc.? What are really my options? So let's talk a little bit about
the mechanical process
of what happens and what this looks like.
The first move on the chessboard in this situation is death certificate. Got to get the process does not get off the ground without one.
Then secondarily, then what happens is that we make sure the assets are in good order to make a transfer, and we create what's called a beneficiary or inherited IRA, which will have the name of mom, or in this case, Tom. Mom and Tom's name will both be on the account.
And then both of the siblings will have their own beneficiary IRAs that will have mom's name and their respective names on them.
Now, one thing that we're going to do is we're certainly going to check and make sure that if the required minimum distribution for 2024 was not taken for mom,
because she's 92,
right? We're going to take that out first, and then distribute the assets to the beneficiary IRAs for the 3 children.
And the reason that you want to make sure before you initiate transfers from mom's IRA into the beneficiary IRAs is because mom's final required minimum distribution really should go on mom's tax return.
Yes.
So that way you're taking the distribution. You can split the net proceeds of that distribution amongst the siblings after you've taken taxes out, but you do want to make sure that it's taken because that'll be recorded on mom's final tax return for 2024. Then you'll split the net amount of that 300, the balance rather of that 300,000 amongst those beneficiary IRAs that have been created.
Okay, so let's assume that we've gone through the fund. We've taken that required minimum distribution. The assets have been split into 3 even pieces. They've gone to those beneficiary IRAs. Naturally, the first question comes out is, okay, I now next year I'm on a 10-year schedule. I now have to begin to take distributions. I know that as Rob, and I love what Rob said about this, that you've inherited mom's RMD schedule. So you have to take out the same percentage she was taking out as a minimum. You can take out more, but we know that the IRA has to be emptied within 10 years.
And just to make things a tiny bit more complicated, because the IRS hadn't come up with their final ruling on the Secure 2.0 Act, like Rob mentioned earlier, they've been waiving the RMD requirement on beneficiary IRAs, meaning if you've received a beneficiary IRA that has the 10-year payout rule, you did not have to take the minimum amount out for the last 2 years, nor for this year, it sounds like, either. However, that doesn't necessarily help you. It just means you avoided any penalties over the last couple of years, but you still have to take the full balance over the same 10-year period.
Yes, and we certainly, and just so you know, we've been recommending that our clients do get on the schedule and stay on the schedule. Because what happens is that we're spreading the income instead of over 8 years or 7 years, we're actually spreading the income over a 10-year period, which should be more tax effective.
I don't know how it benefits you to leave this big lump sum payment at the end. I mean, that wouldn't be good.
True, and we can always talk about, and we are going to get into some conversations about how we can reduce the taxation of those inherited IRA assets.
And we're going to do that right after we take our second break of the hour, so don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with those answers on Straight Talk on Retirement after these messages.
Got gold? Get green at Jewels on Hampton. Jewels on Hampton pays the most for your precious metals, jewelry, gems, currency, antiques, and collectibles. Jewels on Hampton buys precious and semi-precious gems and stones, scrap gold, and sterling silver. Jewels on Hampton buys and sells paper money, wristwatches, and pocket watches. They even take pianos and cars. To sum up, bring your gold chains, bracelets, rings, coins, dental gold, and more to Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton Avenue in St. Louis. And get green. Online at jewelsonhampton.com.
You know, back in the day when you needed an electrician, you called Ben Franklin. He's the one who discovered electricity. Today, you call Michael Baldy from Baldy Electric. You see, he's been in business since 1996, but before then, it was Ben Franklin. But now, Michael Baldy will come out to the house, whether it's a security system, an appliance installation, a backup power generator, that's always a big one, electrical inspections. If you live in the city in an old Victorian home and you have knob and tube wiring, or maybe a brand new commercial building that you need to wire for the 21st century, Michael Baldy and the gang have been in business since 1996. The few people that I've met, you couldn't be any nicer, couldn't be any more respectful, and their knowledge, over the top. So, for all of your electrical needs going forward, whether it's that old Victorian home or a brand new commercial building or anything in between, Baldy Electric. You can change a light bulb. For everything else, BaldyElectric.com, 314-968-9999 or BaldyElectric.com.
Basement with a Y. That's Basement E.
It's Basement T.
Basement E?
It's Basement T.
Oh, Basement T. Basement T. I get it. That's the basement waterproofing and foundation repair experts at Woods Basement Systems.
Right. The all things Basement T experts at Woods Basement Systems will provide you a free estimate and dry up that wet basement and fix that cracked foundation. Call 800-388-9326 or go online to woodsbasementsystems.com.
That's woodsbasementsystems.com. Joy to the world, a Father's born. Let me receive great gift.
Think your dad is the best in the Lou?
That's right.
Go to KTRS.com and look for the Father's Day promotion slider to nominate your dad and tell us why he deserves to be recognized.
Good morning, son.
5 lucky dads will win a $100 prize sponsored by Cardinal Nation and Four Seasons Country Club. Go to KTRS.com now and show dear old dad some love.
Thank you.
Winners announced throughout the day this Friday. And happy Father's Day.
Go!
From the Big 550, KTRS.
Clean up on aisle 7.
Irv, we were never in aisle 7. I'm telling you, honest.
This is Aaron Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email at aaron@jblfinancial.com to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Now, back to Straight Talk on Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, welcome back for our last segment of this hour's show. We do have the Essence guy.
That's right.
Barry, don't be worried. He'll be in.
Right.
He'll
Senior
be in.
VP of Growth will be in at the top of the next hour to answer some of your Medicare questions. So if you have them, queue them up.
Sounds like fun.
84126 on the text line.
So in our last segment, we were talking about Tom and his sisters receiving $100,000 through a beneficiary IRA. We talked about the process about having a death certificate, setting up the accounts. They have both mom's name and their name on that, paying the RMD, making sure if there was due, we get rid of that first, then we distribute the assets to make it nice and clean, which is good. And naturally, the next question is, okay, I have to take a distribution. Mom wasn't a youngster.
Right.
So I'm probably having to take $8,000-$9,000 per as a minimum. I have to have the whole thing emptied.
Which would be about $10,000. So we're between $8,000 and $10,000 a year.
So I'm going to have this new taxable income coming to me. What can I do to reduce it? And we think there's a couple of things that we would certainly ask questions about and for you to consider.
Well,
right?
The first one being, are you making retirement contributions already?
What type of retirement plan do you have? Do you have a 401k? Are you using a SEP, a simple IRA?
How much are you putting in?
Are you maxing that out yet?
If you're married or is your spouse maxing out? So let's use an example. Let's say that in this case, we have a $10,000 distribution that we have to make for mom's IRA. Tom and his spouse, Susie, they're obviously grown-ups, but they're not retired yet. They're each putting in, let's say, $10,000 to $12,000 each.
Ooh, they've got a lot of space.
They've got room, right? Each of them have room. So what either Tom or his wife Susie could do,
or both,
is they could go to their employer and say, okay, reduce my pay. Let's say they do it evenly by $5,000 each
per year.
Send that now into my retirement account, and I have less income, but I'm getting the money from the distribution. So basically, this is an indirect way of moving mom's required minimum distribution into your retirement assets.
That's so smart.
You can't do it directly, but
Right.
what you have done is make a taxable event tax neutral, because as you reduce your pay and contribute to the other key is if you happen to have access to a Roth 401k, you want these funds to go into the traditional side of your 401k because you want to have a pre-tax contribution lowering your taxable pay you'll be taking a taxable distribution from the beneficiary account, which means you'll come out net neutral at the end of the year.
Well, and let's take this a little bit further, okay, if we can. Let's say that Tom and his wife Susie, let's say that they're 63 years old, and they've already decided that, you know what, we're going to retire in the next 3 to 4 years. Well, instead of maybe taking out only the 10, which is the required minimum, maybe they're going to take out more so they can ramp in more into their retirement plans over the next couple of years. And then when their income falls because they've retired, then those distributions, the taxation on the distributions won't be so good. So it's a matter of really timing and customizing. Again, the cool part is we know they have to make a distribution or they're going to pay a penalty. But they don't have to take the minimum. They could take more
as much as they'd like
than the minimum.
Right.
The second thing we might ask, and this is, again, for us, it's sort of like a low-hanging fruit question is, are you eligible to participate in an HSA eligible health insurance plan? Are you making HSA? Are you eligible to make HSA contributions today? And if you are, because you're in that plan, you can put up to $4,100 for this year, plus $1,000 catch-up provision if you're over 50, $5,200. Sorry, $5,100.
Right, $5,100
pre-tax
per spouse.
Into the plan, grows income tax free.
Deferred, you have to say, because if you were to take
and then
it out,
will come out, right, assuming you use it for eligible expenses, it'll come out tax free. So really what we're talking about is a lot of ways to absorb
that income without paying any tax. Well, offsetting it.
And another, if you are, and these are less popular now, but if you still have access maybe to a flexible spending account, those are not portable, meaning you don't get to take those funds with you. It's a use it or lose it every year. But if you know that you have certain medical expenses coming up, even if it just happens to be dental expenses, you need a new pair of glasses, you can always take the distribution from your IRA, contribute that to the flexible spending, the beneficiary IRA, contribute that to your flexible spending account, and you're doing the same thing. It's just you want to be a little more careful with that one, because if you don't use it by the end of the year, those funds don't carry over like they do with a health savings account.
That's why I really love the health savings accounts, because even if you just reimburse yourself for your Part B premiums, that's like $2,000 a year. So
absolutely,
that money
down
will,
the road.
Right. It'll never go unused or unloved.
Unloved.
I like that idea. So we've talked a little bit about traditional IRAs. Roth is the same, but a little different, right?
That's right. So you still have the same schedule, meaning you can't keep the money in the account longer than 10 years, but...
There is no RMD.
And it's not taxable.
It's not taxable on the way out. But you also can't directly move that account into your Roth account. You have to be eligible to make Roth contributions. So you could, in theory, do a distribution from her Roth. If you're eligible, then make a Roth contribution to your Roth. But if you're not eligible to make Roth contributions,
can't do that.
Sorry, Chucky, guess what? It's tax-free. Not a big deal. Pull the money out. Maybe create an investment account.
Or if you're someone that, you have access to a Roth 401k, you've inherited a Roth IRA and you weren't able to make those distributions or you weren't able to make those contributions because money is tight, or you're already maximizing something else, then maybe this gives you the opportunity to put a little bit of money in a Roth account that will be there for you when you retire.
It's a war game.
And we love to play it.
We really do love to play it. It's really fun. I mean, the tax code is really designed for you to take advantage of opportunities that are there. And it really is just a more matter of understanding what all your options are, which isn't easy, but that's why people keep us on the payroll, right?
That's right. And like Rob mentioned, there have been quite a few changes to the tax code over the last several years. They keep adding new decisions or new explanations, as they like to call it. I think the IRS issues letters explaining what the new rules are. So it's important to keep up to date, because in a lot of cases, you can really take advantage of some of these opportunities. Some people see these beneficiary IRAs as potential burdens, but really they could be a great opportunity for you to accelerate your retirement savings without creating any more taxes for yourself.
No, that's, the thing we touched on in the last segment is, just because they passed a law in 2020, that's not the end all be all, because like you said, they're issuing these letters, they're putting more color and more nuance to, well, this is what we really meant. And so, you, as they change, you have to adjust. But if you don't know that the changes have been made, or you're not aware, like you could...
Can't take advantage.
Right. Exactly.
It's, again, for me, being a baby boomer, is curious because the plans we're talking about and the options we're talking about didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. They just didn't. And so what you need to do, again, as we've been saying, is get with your advisor, work with somebody, get the information that you need so that you can make the decision, especially because there's so many inflection points where you do need to make decisions. And if you want to come and see us, it's easy to do. 314-863-0008. Calling us for a coaching session. We'd love to see you, but don't touch that dial. We'll be on for another hour right after these messages.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Straight Talk on Retirement. I'm Aaron Lapidus, your retirement coach.
I'm Robert Markham, your life insurance and fixed annuities sales specialist.
And for a decade first, we have a guest with us this morning, Barry Streit, who is the Senior Vice President of Growth for Essence Healthcare. We thought, since there will be decade-plus changes to Medicare, we needed to have some changes to our show, and we wanted to welcome you, Barry. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much. Really appreciate having me on here.
Absolutely.
By the way, I was told this was CNBC that I was booked for. I kind of feel like maybe there's a little bait and switch here, but that's all right. I'm here, and let's talk.
Hey, we're better than CNBC because you're going to be able to answer some questions from our listeners. So listeners, if you have any questions for Barry, please send us a text, 84126 from the text line. I'm going to ask for text because I've got a lot of Barry and I have a lot of really interesting points I think you all are going to enjoy, and I want to make sure we maximize our time with Barry this morning. Awesome. So Barry, tell us a little bit about what brought you to Essence and what your background is.
Yeah, absolutely. I was most recently at United Healthcare for 13 years and was part of the Medicare sales distribution team there. Prior to that, I was in the financial services industry, similar to what you guys do. I was at Charles Schwab for 10 years, TD Ameritrade for a couple of years. I ran a broker-dealer in Chicago for a big bank. So I've been on both sides of the business. I always thought that the security side was really complicated until I went into the Medicare business. I'm like, oh my goodness, how does anybody understand this? So over time, I worked at different places. Old boss of mine from Schwab went to UHC, brought me along. I was there for a while. Then I left UHC and came to Essence. Essence is an interesting company. I look at it as one of the best companies that nobody's ever heard of outside of St. Louis. I was just amazed at how good this company was, that it's 5-star rated, which is the top rating you can get. It is all U.S. service, like all of the things that I wish the big companies could do. So my time at the big company, learned a lot. It was a great experience. But to me, the Essence, the smaller regional companies, it's just much more personal. It's much more focused on the member and the physician rather than stockholders. It was just a great fit for me. So I'm really glad I'm here.
So let's expound on that a little bit. Tell me what really sets Essence apart from the other major carriers that are available, especially in our market.
Well, part of it is that we grew up here, right? It was a beginning of physicians and others who started the plan to begin with. And so it's always been very physician focused, making sure that the physicians are doing the things that Medicare, the government, wants them to do for care of the members. And so if you know, the CMS does star ratings every year. Only 31 plans in the entire country have gotten 5 stars. Essence is one of them right here in St. Louis.
And they have been more than 1 year in the past.
Yeah, 3 years in a row. And,
it's fabulous.
It's really, really hard to do that. And I think it's been 3 out of the last 5, maybe. It's been pretty amazing.
So I know enrollees see that 5-star rating. Could you just give us a little bit about what actually goes into creating a 5-star plan, or what CMS gauges to offer that, to give that 5-star rating?
You know, I think there's a list that's probably longer than both of my arms of all of these different measures. There are certain measures that carry more weight, but ultimately it is based on, are you performing in all of the things that CMS wants you to do, preventative care and vaccinations and all the different things that CMS describes as quality for Medicare members. Also service. Also, are people happy with when they call you? Do they get right answers? Do they get people they can understand? And the technology is good, right? All of those things go in. Even if you can get dinged if the doctor's office parking lot is too crowded and somebody gets a call and complains about that. So there's a zillion measures, which is also one of those things that goes into like to be able to get 5 stars in all of these areas, some of which you can't directly control, is pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome.
That is really awesome. So I think the big question on most people's mind at this point is, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, which is that there are going to be some really significant changes to Medicare in the upcoming year, not just because there are always changes,
yes,
but also because the government has made some pretty significant changes, especially to closing the donut hole in 2025. So I know we can't talk specific benefits, one, because we're not allowed to until October 1st, most importantly, but can you give us a general idea of what Essence approach is going to be in their benefit designs and to these major changes that CMS and the government are going to be rolling out?
Yeah. So like you said, we can't talk about anything specific. And in fact, we just filed benefits every year. The first Monday in June is when all of the Medicare Advantage carriers send in their bids to CMS. And so we just sent those out. And there's always a possibility that some of those things change. I can tell you that for our philosophy, it's always going to be focused on the member. So whatever new costs, new expenses that have come in, and there's quite a few of them, we want to impact the member as little as possible. With that said, the amount of new costs that have been coming in, and some of them are very beneficial to the consumer. So I'm not necessarily complaining about that. But nevertheless, it's additional costs to the carrier that they have to then figure out where do these costs go.
And you're really kind of referring to the fact that now the government has shifted the financial responsibility of the Part D donut hole back from the consumer essentially to the insurance companies.
Right. And this is one where you can definitely say it was a benefit. It is a benefit to the consumer if you're using medications and you're going to spend more than $2,000 in a year. That's the new cap. And so in the past, you would go into the donut hole, which is incredibly complicated to explain to a consumer or to explain to anybody. So from a sales standpoint, I'm glad that's gone because I've been doing this a really long time and it's still really complicated. But within the donut hole, you had different parties who were paying for the meds. You had the CMS paid for a piece, the carrier, and then the consumer would pay a piece. Under the new rules, once you hit $2,000 of spend, it's all the insurance carriers' responsibility to pay for all of that. So no matter how expensive the drugs are, the company is going to pay, and drug prices are not coming down. So it's a help to the consumer, but it is going to be a hit to the carriers who then have to figure out where does that extra money come from.
And I know we saw an article in the Wall Street Journal where the national carriers have already talked about cutting those extra benefits that are currently available to consumers.
Yeah, I think the Medicare Advantage landscape that we've all come to expect over the last 15 years, but especially the last 5, as these ancillary benefits have gotten more aggressive, it is definitely going to be different moving forward. The public companies like Humana, UHC, Aetna, these are public companies who have to report. This is all public information that everybody is aware of, me and all your listeners if they read it. But they've lost quite a bit of money for all sorts of various reasons, and they've already publicly stated that they are going to reduce benefits to the maximum allowed and pull out of markets that are not profitable for them. So if the big guys are facing that, the similar headwinds for most of the other ones, and I think some of the smaller companies, though, don't have the same challenges, but it'll impact the entire industry.
Absolutely. All right. So I also know that this isn't something that's only going to be impacting Medicare Advantage plans. A lot of these shifts are now going to have serious impacts for those individuals that are using Medicare supplements as well as prescription drug plans. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago on our show, where we're going to see for the first time in several decades, it sounds like, a pretty significant premium increase to those Medicare supplement premiums and those prescription drug standalone plans. We've seen a lot of companies go to $0 premiums. That's probably going to be a thing of the past.
Yeah, I never like getting into the prediction game because you just don't always know what the downstream effects of all these changes are. But certainly if you look short term, again, it's just more costs that have to be absorbed somewhere. And so when you think of MedSup, and Medicare Supplement's a great product, it's expensive. It's always been expensive, but it's a really good product. The challenge with MedSup is they don't have different places within the product to move extra costs. So with a Medicare Advantage plan, you've got the Part D side, you've got ancillaries, you've got all sorts of levers that you can pull if you need to try to move costs around. MedSup doesn't have that. It's just the MedSup. It's just based on claims and money coming in and all of that. And so those rates are going up quite a bit for the same reason that Humana and Cigna or not Cigna, but Aetna and UAC is talking about, right, extra claim costs coming in. And so they're in the same boat, but they don't have any other places to put it. When you buy a MedSup, you traditionally buy a standalone Part D, right, for the drugs because drugs aren't covered by Medicare. We just talked about $2,000 as a cap. The insurance carrier is going to have to eat everything above $2,000, which is going to drive the cost of those standalone Part Ds up quite a bit as well.
So that'll still be the case, even though basically the federal government's been cut out of the expense portion above $2,000 for the prescription drugs. People are still going to have to buy standalone prescription drug plans.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's expensive, but it's also going to cover more. You're not going to pay more than $2,000, but you got to lay out the money first. And so, you're going to see increase in costs because the government's not subsidizing above, and just the $2,000 limit is just going to end up costing a lot more money for the carriers.
Absolutely. So, can you talk a little bit about how Essence has changed its sales approach? I know before you were using quite a few captive agents, meaning people that were working directly with Essence, and now you've kind of broadened out your scope to start working with people like JBL Financial, where we sell all of the other carriers. We're independent agents, so to speak.
So part of Essence's history has been local here in St. Louis. We have and still have excellent captive agents who are employees of ours. And part of that strategy is we believe that our employed agents, all they sell is Essence all day long. They know all the ins and outs. They know the providers. They know, like, they're the best trained, and we have much better influence over the overall experience because they're our employees. But nowadays, you can't dictate to consumers how they work with you. And so consumers want to work with companies however they want to. If they want it to be online, if they want to talk to their financial advisor, which has been a really big growth area, big change in the market, they might want to go to Walmart. They might want to go to their Fidelity, right? Their bank, right? In this world, if you're going to survive, the only people who get a vote are the consumers. And so we want to be in all the different channels that the consumers want us in. And each channel has pluses and minuses. But we definitely opened up to select brokers and select agents about a year or so ago.
And you say select because those agents still have to go through a pretty rigorous training on an annual basis to sell Essence.
Yeah, so all agents have to do, they call it certification every year for each carrier that they wish to represent. We know that Essence is a little bit more complicated to sell because we don't try to get every doctor in the network. You have to have certain abilities to perform the way CMS wants you to perform. We don't just blanket the markets with contracts. We really want to make sure that the agents that are representing Essence understand Essence and understand the value of 5-star and not just selling the glitzy things that a lot of the big nationals come up with to be really attractive to consumers. But do they really help the consumer down the road? That's debatable.
And so that's a great point that you make. You know, Essence has had a much smaller network in the past. However, you have started to expand your network, especially, I can't speak to necessarily other markets, but I know in the St. Louis metro area, Essence really has worked to expand the network because we have so many excellent hospital systems here.
Yeah, this is a great market, and it's a unique market in that this area is up to speed on value-based care, which is I don't know how much of the listeners know or even care, but it's a newer trend where the industry is going, the entire medical industry and certainly Medicare, where it's a collaboration between the physicians and the plans, and the goal is to try to keep you out of the hospital and keep you out of the doctor's office rather than trying to find ways to control the spend after you get sick or after you get injured. And it's just a different way of looking at it. And usually you find that on the coast, California, New York, and St. Louis is an interesting little island here. Where the physicians and everybody are sophisticated in value-based care.
And I think that's an important point that you make, especially when we're going to see, as we've already heard, that there will be some cuts to these ancillary benefits, that what I like to call the extra benefits to these plans. Can you talk a little bit about how you would approach, if you were consuming, you said you're about to turn 65. I know you're probably on Essence's healthcare, but if you were going to take Medicare, what would you be looking for in terms of your benefits? We always talk about the doctors, the physicians, and the care is the most important thing to look at. The ancillary benefits are literally just that. Those are the nice extras, but they shouldn't be what drives you to a plan.
Right. They're great. They're great if you get them, and they're great if they work, but that should not be your main focus. I don't choose my airline based on the quality of the peanuts, but, it's a similar idea, is that you want quality. That really is the right way to go.
All right. So we've got our first text question.
All right. I'm ready.
All right.
And our texter writes, so if insurance carriers will have to shoulder more costs in 2025 due to the elimination of the donut hole, is it possible Advantage plans will start having a premium cost?
Well, a lot of Advantage plans do have premium costs.
Sure.
They're not all zero premium, and there's quite a variety out there. And it just depends on your needs and what you're looking for, and if you have chronic conditions, if you take a lot of medications, right? There's quite a few that are out there. And it is, I don't know if we're going to see fewer zero premium because, again, there's different levers. There's the premium and there's copays and there's, coinsurance and all these other different levers that can be pulled. So I don't know if we're going to see all of that, but there's definitely going to be some impacts. There's probably going to be here's another thing that's interesting is we talked earlier about the two big generations that are in Medicare right now. There's the younger folks, quote unquote, younger folks like myself.
Turning 65.
Super young, turning 65, yeah. And then the older folks within Medicare who are maybe 70 something plus, and they look at things differently. So when we talk about benefits, the older consumers might say, hey, I really like the hearing benefits. I really like the transportation benefits. Whereas a younger consumer coming in at age 65 maybe doesn't, like they're fine driving and their eyes are fine. Like they don't care about transportation. They don't care about hearing aids, but they do care about other things.
The
gyms
dental.
Yes. Yeah. Dental is huge. And, there's and we're still figuring out things that are valuable to our consumers, that are interesting, that we can look at, that's different from what has been done for the last 15 years.
And I know specifically in the St. Louis market, the maximum out of pocket has always been a huge sticking point compared to some other markets in terms of how people take a look at their Medicare Advantage plans. That's obviously another lever that can be used with these plans to shift benefit costs.
Yep. Yeah, MOOP, as they call it, the max out of pocket, is one of those areas, and it's really important whenever, and we get this quite a bit. It's like, oh, well, my sister in LA gets all of these benefits and only pays whatever, whereas we pay this in this market. And so what's really important to know is that CMS, again, this is the organization that oversees Medicare, they set up service areas and they set the payment rate for those service areas based on
cost of living, all those kind of pieces.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. So like LA and Miami, I don't know all the different prices, but I know LA and Miami tend to be the highest in the country. And then there's smaller rural that are offer less money. And so what you are getting in one market is not necessarily, you just can't compare it. You can only compare it against others in your market.
Absolutely. And I always like to think about the maximum out of pocket because I'm sure that's, we've seen those fluctuate, especially in this market over time, up, also back down again. That's really the last benefit the insurance company provides to you because you have to spend your money first to get there. So in my mind, when we're looking at benefits and changes to benefits, I always like to talk about with the clients, what are your usage benefits, right? What does it cost to go to the doctor when you see those physicians? If you have ongoing chronic issues, you need regular scans. What do those things cost? Because even if you were to use those on a regular basis, you're not necessarily hitting that maximum out of pocket.
Right, absolutely. Especially if again, it goes back to like if you have zero copays for certain physicians, like for your PCP, then nothing is being applied towards your MOOP because there's nothing out of pocket. And so the way that we look at it, I think you're doing it exactly the right way is, and this is also why we encourage annual reviews is because people's health changes, their medications change, they might have a new doctor, they might have been diagnosed with a new issue. So it makes sense to look every year. But yeah, it definitely is one of those issues that is challenging, but needs to be updated on a regular basis.
Is there anything else that you would like to add for our listeners? I know we're several months out from open enrollment, but since this is going to be a big one this year, anything that you would like to add for them, any tips or tricks heading into open enrollment?
Well, so I think most people probably, just like when I get stuff from my auto insurance company or my homeowner's insurance, I glance at it and then I stick it in a drawer somewhere. Don't do that this year. This year is going to be a lot of changes with every company. And I think we're going to see a large number of, as we've already heard from the big companies, exits in markets. I don't know about our market in particular, but it is definitely going to be a weird year. So I really encourage everybody to review the information that you get from your carrier and talk to an agent, talk to the company that you want to, like, call Essence, call whoever you want to talk to, but make sure you get some clarity.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in, Barry. We really appreciate your time this morning. I know our listeners appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you back before open enrollment when we can talk a little bit more about the changes that have come up.
Anytime. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And for everyone else, we will be right back after these messages, so don't touch that dial.
Hi, I'm Mark Cantor of Cantor Injury Law, and we are proud to sponsor KTRS Radio. You can count on Cantor to know you, to know your injury, and to know the law. You can count on Cantor to care for you and your family. You can count on Cantor because we have been doing trial work in Missouri and winning for over 30 years now. You can count on Cantor to never sell you out and to fight hard to maximize your financial recovery. You can count on Cantor to never charge a fee or any money out of pocket until you win. Count on Cantor. If your serious injury case is in Missouri, you need a serious injury lawyer that is in Missouri. Shop around, look at the ratings, and then call Cantor Injury Law at 314-628-9999 or visit us at cantorinjurylaw.com. You can count on Cantor to be different than the lawyers you see on TV because we are actually here in Missouri.
Choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisement.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Welcome back to our last half hour of Straight Talk on Retirement. Again, we thank Barry Streit for coming in to see us this morning. But now it's back to your questions.
Absolutely. Very informative. And we've got our next text question queued up. And our texter writes, I have a beneficiary IRA that I inherited from my father in 2020. This contains Boeing stock. Can I move the Boeing stock to my traditional IRA or another account each year as my RMD without creating a taxable event or selling the stock? I wish you could.
Unfortunately, most broker-dealers require a sale of the security and a distribution of cash from that beneficiary IRA. You might want to check specifically with your broker-dealer if they'll allow for the transfer of the stock in the beneficiary amount, and then you will still owe the taxes. You can't move anything from the beneficiary IRA without paying taxes. Also, that's really where the obligation comes in because the government wants their money. I know with our broker-dealer specifically, you'd have to make a sale of the security, take the distribution. Now, you could
could buy it right back into your new account.
Absolutely. You could buy it in your after-tax account if you'd like with the excess cash.
We have our next question. I have a question. Last year, my accountant said I was approximately approximately $150,000 in my portfolio. That's great. But he said if I sold Can you read that?
But he said that if he sold off a few shares of stocks, making it so I didn't have to pay any taxes on the $150,000 gain. How does that work? My portfolio is $150,000 from last year. I paid no taxes. That the wash rule.
Well, we know what the wash rule is. The wash rule is basically when you're buying and selling the same thing within a 30-day period. And most folks see this happening in their mutual funds when they've made a sale, but at the same time, they've declared a dividend. And so even though they may be reinvesting that money, what's happening is that they don't get the benefit of that.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing. So I like the last segment too, by the way.
Yeah, you enjoyed?
I enjoyed it. And, Barry told me that he married a Pittsburgh gal.
Two. The different times,
well,
obviously.
I wasn't going there, but that's okay. He has something that he likes about Pittsburgh. I like that too.
We do like that. It's always nice, and it was really interesting to hear from someone that's been at multiple companies on the Medicare Advantage side of things, because as he mentioned, they all do things a little bit differently, but coming from United to Essence is a really interesting transition. So it's he's a great resource for us to have.
I found it interesting, talking about this is going to be a year where there's going to be a lot of big changes to these policies. And, if you weren't working with an agent before, this may be the year where you really do want to, given the changes that we know are coming. We don't know what the changes are. We knew, and like Jeff said, even if we did know, we couldn't talk about them. But, those changes, that ball is rolling downhill. So this could be the year that, you come in for, a Medicare coaching session, if not with us, then certainly with someone else. And, that way you get get the right plan for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a big deal because I know that during our reviews, we're not looking at just what the plan changes were.
Right.
We're also factoring in whether people have changed their physician relationships or they've changed their prescriptions and really kind of rerunning it all over again.
That's right, because every year could be a big year for you. The idea is that the great thing about Medicare, and the great thing that's always going to be the case about Medicare, regardless of what changes are happening and evolutions in the industry, is that you get to tailor your health insurance, your health care to your health care needs. Meaning, Essence might have been the great fit one year, but down the line it could be United or Aetna or another carrier that's offering different benefits that you need to utilize, because each of the plans do have the ability, like Barry was talking about, levers to pull. They pull different levers, and what that means is different benefits for you.
Well, and I was going to say, and again, I was listening to the segment. I may have missed this discussion if it had happened, but you guys have to go through a lot of training each year.
Yeah.
On these Medicare Advantage programs. This isn't something that as an agent, I want to sell Medicare Advantage this year, I can just go do it. You have to get licensed by each company, go through their training to make sure you understand all of their benefits. And having someone that has that specialized knowledge level that really can help you make your way through the plans. And it doesn't cost you. I mean, that's really what the big deal here is. The insurance companies are paying somebody
to do the marketing essentially for them.
That's right. So if you go direct, you're only going to get one opinion. If you're using someone who's a specialist, then you're going to be able to understand really what's going on in the market. Because the fact of the matter is, and there's no secret here, every company pays the same thing.
That's right.
And actually, is it CMS? They require that it happens.
Yeah, CMS has guidelines as to what agent compensation can be per application for that very rule, which is they don't want agents to favor one company over another for their own benefit. It's really about the consumer, like Barry was talking about. And I think, a lot of times open enrollment tends to focus on Medicare Advantage enrollees, making changes to your Medicare Advantage plan. You've seen changes, but now that we are going to see such significant changes to the Medicare supplement market, as well as the prescription drug market, if you're using a supplement plus a prescription drug plan, it might be your opportunity to cost you nothing, and there's no obligation to do a comparison between what your Medicare supplement is costing you every year and what Medicare Advantage can offer you for a similar or reduced potential cost.
And we're talking about that 52 weeks a year. Every single show. And it's important because we know that healthcare is really a super important component to all of our clients' retirement, not only from a financial point of view, but really from a security, peace of mind point of view.
I mean, for the last 10 years, I've heard at every single one of our broker-dealer conferences, one of the top 3 concerns for retirees approaching retirement, so because they're retirees, right, is healthcare costs. So being able to couple what those expenses are going to be. Next week, Frank is going to talk about the gaps in Medicare coverage, what it doesn't cover, and how we can help you fill those gaps, not just with a Medicare Advantage plan or a supplement, but where the gaps in that coverage are, how you can fill those gaps in a cost-effective way, know what those costs are going to be. That really creates certainty for you. It also creates a little bit of reassurance because you know what those costs are going to be down the road.
And it seems like in many of the meetings that we're in, the healthcare concerns even outrank taxes, if you could believe it.
Absolutely. I don't even think taxes were in the top 3. Do I have enough to retire? Cost of healthcare, and I can't even remember what the third was, but it wasn't taxes. So great point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would get to here is obviously being in this ineligible for and actually changing over to Medicare.
You're not just eligible; you are a Medicare enrollee.
There is so much literature that's out there about people going bankrupt because of healthcare costs in retirement, and it just ain't true. I mean, what happens is Medicare's paying most of the costs. You're hopefully choosing a plan that's filling the gaps. You have these maximum out of pockets, as you were talking about,
or premiums, which are essentially a maximum out of pocket in their own right,
which is extremely low. You have prescription drug costs that are actually going down because they're being mandated to go down. And we know that there's going to be some cost shifting eventually in doing that. But healthcare costs aren't going to drive you into bankruptcy and retirement. But having the right plan so that you can minimize your out-of-pocket costs is what you want to do.
You also don't want to, Dad, you always said to me you don't want to fight the plan.
Right.
Which is finding a plan that works for you. That's what the goal is, not constantly having to work against your policy, going out of network, using benefits that aren't available to you, not maximizing the benefits that you have. That's really where the value is of working with a professional, I think, which is they can, one, uncover the benefits that you need, uncover the benefits that you want to have access to. Like Barry was talking about, different consumers have different goals, different desires in their benefits. So let's find the plan that we can marry those two things together for you. Make sure that your physicians fit so you're not fighting your policy and paying more than you need to on an annual basis. And that way you can help yourself minimize costs. It won't matter what the insurance companies do. You're still maximizing every opportunity that you have.
You're ultimately the first line of defense.
Right.
Well, let me put it in even more simplistic terms, which people don't really talk about. You know, those folks that are now going on and becoming eligible and enrolling in Medicare, that have been in managed care plans, whether it's Anthem or United or Aetna or whomever.
Usually your group health insurance is what you're referring to.
You've already been trained
to use the network,
to use the book. For 30 years when I was doing company health insurance, it was always about using the book. Don't choose against the plan. Don't choose against the doctor network. Use the plan. Well, in this case, as we've talked about many times, ad nauseum, you aren't going to change your physicians unless you want to. You'll find a plan where your physicians participate, where your drug costs are at their lowest amounts, and you run from there. You're going to use the book. So using a professional, finding someone that actually does this 365 days a year is extremely important. Don't go direct to the insurance companies because you're only going to have one bird chirping in your ear. It'd be better to go to that bird that has 10 birds chirping in their ear.
And they get to help you narrow down the options. It's like they're the funnel for you, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy. And guess what? The insurance companies are paying them to do it.
You know, if you work with a professional like Frank in our office, I mean, it doesn't just end when you sign up for your plan at open enrollment. You know, if you have a question mid-year, hey, I got a bill, I don't quite understand this. Hey, let me give Frank a call. Let me put eyes on it. And, that's the kind of relationship you can have, but again, you have to start the relationship.
Well, and the thing is that we're getting paid.
That's right.
The insurance companies pay us when you enroll. They also
We're
pay us
on
a
the
fee.
payroll.
We're literally on the payroll. We get a fee every year that you renew.
With us.
And so we've already set up the administrative mechanism behind it to deal with issues because we still service, 30, 40, I don't even know how many regular company plans here in the city for various employers. And so we're ready to do that. It's easy. And it's also easy, I think, we could
take our second break of the hour, so it's easy for you not to touch that dial, because we'll be right back after these messages.
Back in the day when you needed an electrician, you called Ben Franklin. He's the one who discovered electricity. Today, you call Michael Baldy from Baldy Electric. You see, he's been in business since 1996, but before then, it was Ben Franklin. But now, Michael Baldy will come out to the house, whether it's a security system, an appliance installation, a backup power generator, that's always a big one, electrical inspections. If you live in the city in an old Victorian home and you have knob and tube wiring, or maybe a brand new commercial building that you need to wire for the 21st century, Michael Baldy and the gang have been in business since 1996. The few people that I've met, you couldn't be any nicer, couldn't be any more respectful, and their knowledge, over the top. So, for all of your electrical needs going forward, whether it's that old Victorian home or a brand new commercial building or anything in between, Baldy Electric, you can change a light bulb. For everything else, BaldyElectric.com, 314-968-9999 or BaldyElectric.com.
This is Erin Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email at aaron@jblfinancial.com to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Woohoo! 1041 here on the Big 550 KTRS. We're here to answer your questions and your calls. 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the KTRS text line. So we talked a little bit about healthcare this morning, which we love to do. We talked a little about IRAs, which we always love to do. But during coaching sessions with prospective clients and even with existing clients, many of them will come up with, I love this goal. I want to be debt-free before I retire. And this is a noble goal.
Very laudable.
A noble goal.
Well, no, I mean, it's great. I mean,
a lofty goal.
For some people, it's maybe too lofty. For other folks, does it make sense for me to do it? I had a conversation yesterday with a client who, this is fun. They happen to be a pastor, his wife. They've been living rent-free, mortgage-free for 30 years because their parish they lived in the home that the parish owns. Not unusual. But he wants to retire. And what's interesting is that what was keeping him from retiring was for them finding a home that they wanted. So,
well, that's hard in this market, I would say.
Right. It isn't easy. And because obviously, and my mantra when it comes to buying real estate, and I truly believe this one is, you have to be in love. If you don't love this property, believe me, it's going to be hard for somebody after you to love the property. And it's also, at the end of the day, probably the most illiquid asset that you're going to have. Because you have to wait for someone to say, I want to buy this property.
And you have to agree on the price.
Yeah, which is not easy to because there's ego involved. But let's talk a little bit about our friend Tom.
Another Tom.
Not a Dick and a Harry, just a Tom. So Tom said that he has a mortgage of about $210,000 today. He's also agreed to take over paying student loans for his children, his son, of about $80,000. He currently has about $10,000 of credit card debt. So altogether, his total debt service That's a nice word, debt service, right? It doesn't feel like it's a service when you have to.
It's service to the debt.
Exactly. It's about $300,000.
That was very nice of him to help his son repay $80,000.
Right.
That's
well. Again, this is a
well,
very.
That makes you really nice, Dad.
What do you mean?
I think my debt was a little loftier than the 80,000.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. Okay, but
I was just giving thanks.
Okay, well, you're getting your welcomes.
Father's Day is approaching.
That's right.
That's the appropriate time for thanks.
That's right. And I do like blueberry honey. You know that. So.
Well aware.
You haven't baked me a blueberry pie in a while. It would be nice.
It would be nice.
Our listeners thinks it would be nice. Believe me.
Oh, is that what they said?
We're gonna have Team Jeff
rolling
you better
in.
believe the text line is going to be flying in. Bake for Dad. Bake for Dad. Bake for Dad.
Bake for one of my favorite dads.
Exactly. At least the one that's going to eat all of it and certainly doesn't need the calories. So, quite a lofty goal, and it's a good one. But when you're approaching a goal, what's real important is that you really need to think about process. How do I get from here,
which is where you are,
to there? The end being IO0. So, we've kind of put together what we think are some steps that you should think about, you should consider, should really become maybe the basic framework for helping to get this done. So let's talk a little about those.
Well, the first one is you have to rank your debts by the interest rate being charged. What you don't want to do is, you've got an interest rate of say 3% on a certain debt, and one by that's 10, and you don't want to prioritize the 3 over the 10.
Sometimes people prioritize the size of the debt over the expense of the debt. So it's important to prioritize the expense of the debt over the size. Also, amortization schedule factors into this as well. When we're looking at Tom's debts, we know that his mortgage debt is probably the least expensive, and it has the longest amortization schedule. It's probably a 30-plus year loan. Not sure where he is in that at the moment. The student loan debt is probably the most expensive because we just know that empirically that unfortunately student loan rate interest charges are relatively high. Not to mention that credit card debt is probably the highest with the shortest amortization schedule of annual versus student loan debt is significantly longer than that.
So the first move is we get them line up the territories by interest rate being charged.
Yes, no question about that. The only other hurdle, and Aaron, you mentioned a couple of these, is why you took on the obligation.
Oh, people do think about why they want to pay off a certain obligation based on order of importance.
Right. And
Forget it.
In reality, once you've spent the money, it's just
Done.
debt. It literally, think of it as it's just vanilla, it's debt. So let's prioritize these based on interest rate. This is a war game. In war, what do? We attack the weakest front. The weakest front for you, guess what, is what you're paying the most in interest. So we want to kill
the credit card debt first.
The credit card debt first. It's going to be the highest payments and the highest interest rate. Get rid of those first.
So
luckily for Tom, he's only got $10,000. So in addition to being the highest interest rate, it's also the lowest of his debt obligations, which is great.
So first you want to determine of those 3. So what is the minimum payment on each debt? The mortgage, the student loan debt, and then the credit card debt. Then you want to determine how much you have to allocate towards your debt service. Is if in order to pay things off faster, it's going to have to be more than a minimum payment somewhere.
Right.
Yes.
We want to take your excess, so you want to take the excess and put it towards the credit card debt in this example first. So you're, as you would say, Dad, killing that debt as quickly as possible.
Well, yeah, let's use an example because in many cases, folks will do, okay, well, I have a mortgage and let's say my payment's $1,000 a month, including tax and insurance.
Okay.
But I have this credit card debt. Well, what I'm doing is I'm taking $100 extra and putting it towards my mortgage payment.
Stop.
Because what happens is, as Aaron was saying, the mortgage is amortized over a 15 or 30-year period. You're really only killing what you're doing is you're reducing your principal that you owe, but most of that component is not going to be high cost interest. Whereas with a credit card, all of it is. You're getting killed. So minimum payments to the other obligations, and then we kill one at a time.
So if we took that extra $100, we put it towards the credit card debt. The minute the credit card debt is completed, you take the payment, the minimum payment from the credit card debt, plus the extra $100, and you add that to the student loan debt, would be my guess, is the next obligation that goes. So you're still spending the same amount of money every month on your debt service, but you are reallocating where those expenses are going, and you are not going to stop until the last debt is paid.
Yeah, and unfortunately, one of the options that we did have available, and certainly we recommended in many cases in the past, was for our clients to take a look at consolidating their debt. Taking student loan debt as an example, credit card debt, and taking out a home equity line of credit, a lot of times made sense because what happened was the interest rate was low and you had a 10-year amortization. So you've really blown away that credit card debt, which is really like a 1-year amortization. And we know that the student loan debt can be 20 or 30, et cetera, but we're typically getting to a lower interest rate. So we're really doing two things at one time. Number one is lowering the cost of the debt. Number two is expanding the period of time to pay it off within 10 years. And then you could then go from there.
Which should lower the payment, which means you could be putting more towards it because you have a lower minimum payment, but you're putting excess towards it.
And the other thing is that up until, I guess it was a year or two ago, interest expense on home equity, mortgage, lines of credit was tax deductible. Now they're not.
Also, it was relatively small before the Fed started raising rates. We were talking about between 4.5% and 5% at the top end. Now we're talking between 8% and 9% in some cases.
Right, and at the same time, in some cases, in the old days, which frankly was maybe only 2 years ago.
The old days.
It may even been a possibility to take all of this debt and consolidate it to your primary mortgage. Then what you're able to do is maybe get the lowest rate, and obviously you could expand your payment period, maybe to a 30-year mortgage as an example, to get that number down. Getting it to a place that becomes manageable so that you can kill it, eliminate it, liquidate it in the speed that you want. Because for many folks, at the very end of the day, if they've made this decision that I'm going to be debt free, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, especially if it's something that can make sense. Where's the source of the capital? For most of us, it's our retirement accounts. We've been told save pre-tax, the best way to do it, and that's right. So you've got these large account balances, but you have to pay taxes to get at the money.
And for most people, that's about the 15% rate, especially if we're going to pile some excess distributions that are above and beyond what your normal living expenses are.
Well, that's where it starts. But then but then as we know, and we're looking at this all the time, if you're married filing jointly, you can have income. We're talking about Social Security and other income up to $90,000 a year, and you're still in a 12% effective bracket. But if Tom comes back and says, you know what, I have $200,000, I want to get rid of it today. $200,000 or even $100,000 over a 2-year period. Maybe we're spreading over 2 years. This could have serious impact not only on his he could be going into another Medicare Part B income bracket, but also he has to throw up at least twice because we're looking at probably going to have to do withholding of at least 25%. So it's costing him $125,000 to pull 100. He's doing that twice. That means we're talking about $250,000 to pull $200,000.
And I've kind of come to the realization you have to pay someone when you're taking money out of your retirement accounts. You're either going to pay the federal government, it could be at a 25% rate in taxes, or you're paying the bank or whomever, the bank who's holding whichever loan you're looking at, if it's a credit card debt, if it's a mortgage, if it's student loan debt. Usually those rates of interest are less than 25%. So the goal should be to have the least expensive payment possible, pay
over the shortest period of time.
Exactly, which means in most cases it's not the federal government.
Let me go back to my pastor and his spouse, because this is kind of curious. They found a home, which was great.
They found a house?
They found a house, and they're getting ready to make an offer on it, which is great.
That's cool.
The price was within their means, because because basically they're going to have to come up with cash and or borrow. What's kind of fun is that they did have enough between their savings, because they've been saving they knew this was coming, And so they'd saved up a fair amount of money. We also had been invested some money for them. And so we knew that we had enough that they could really purchase this home, pay for it, deal with a little bit of upgrades, if you want to call it, repainting, new floors, that kind of stuff. And they'd have capital left. So their question was, if we pull the capital out, and in their case, fortunately, it was after-tax capital, so this is kind of an optional situation, almost like pulling from their savings. Would what they have left be sufficient to maintain their income stream? So we had a whole nother calculation that we had to do. Do we take this capital out of service, if you want to think of it that way? The income that it would generate out of their pockets, literally because we're putting into a home where they're going to earn nothing.
Right.
And does that number work? Number one. Number two, how are they going to feel after that? Not having debt is great because what happens is you don't have that outflow, that obligation. Now, still they're going to have real estate taxes and insurance. No question about that. They're still going to have upkeep, but they're not going to have that payment. What does that do for their peace of mind? And fortunately for them, what's kind of interesting as a sidelight here was the home that they were purchasing had a VA mortgage, which was assumable.
That's pretty cool.
They didn't know what the amount was. So I said, here, let's do this. Let's get a little more information. You're going to make an offer. Hopefully it'll be acceptable. You'll find out what the mortgage amount is. It's not unreasonable to ask because the seller told you that they have VA mortgage that you could assume. Let's find out what that is. We'll redo the calculations again.
Right.
And fortunately that mortgage was at 4%. So woohoo. Great rate if they could assume it. Maybe it made sense for them just to do it just so that they could keep their money in their money market account earning 5%, just so they maybe felt like, hey, we hadn't given away most of our capital. But we'll figure that out. The nice part is then we can really develop a strategy to eliminate this in a reasonable period of time. It's a math problem. Finances are about math. Taking away the emotion as much as you can and really looking at what the numbers are. And I think that's where, once you're able to do that, and frankly, in many cases, let's be honest, you can't do it on your own. When you're in the middle of something, you become emotionally tied to it. Having a third party look at this and go, hey, what about this option? What about that option, et cetera?
Well, also, we're all creatures of habit, I think, which is we've been doing something one way for quite some time, can just continue to do it the same way. Having someone else take a look at things might open your eyes to another option or another opportunity that you hadn't thought about before. Absolutely.
And what was so fun about this case was, we had been talking, these folks have been clients of ours for 2-3 years at this point. Mm-hmm. And so since the day we began talking, and this was a really a big thing this is like their number one priority thing. My thing was like, okay, the minute you find this place, call me.
And they did.
And they did. And it was like, Jeff, okay, it's time to talk. Da-da-da-da. I mean, we're going through the numbers. We're having fun. We're back and forth. We're going to get more information, et cetera. And for them, the financial security is going to be there for them. Mm-hmm. I think it will be because even using a prudent rate to withdraw the assets that would be left, they'll be able to maintain the lifestyle that they have and they want, which is great, with or without the mortgage. So finding the fit that makes them feel good is really what our ultimate goal is going to be. So, I mean, this is a puzzle. We just don't have all the pieces. I can't wait to see what the last ones are, because then we'll really have fun to decide, do we pay some of that down or how long do we take to pay it off? Or do we even pay it off at all?
I mean, this is another example of keeping all of your options open. Yes. Taking the financing gives you the opportunity to, as you like to say, Dad, become your own banker. Yes. Which is you get to pick the amortization schedule if you want it to accelerate or you don't want to accelerate it at all. But not taking the mortgage essentially is limited. Now you're going to look at what, a cash out refi? That doesn't make sense.
Well, and folks will know when they hear me say this because it really is true. If you have the money and the ability to pay off an obligation, then you don't have to. You do it when it makes it feel good. If it keeps you up at night having this obligation, you have the cash paid off, why would you? Don't lose any sleep. Go and do it.
My dad keeps asking me this question. If he doesn't have a mortgage on his house and he takes out a home equity loan and he sells the house. Say, the house is $1 million. He takes out $250,000. He sells the house for $1 million. He has to pay back the loan. He's only taxed on $750,000.
No, he's taxed on the full $1 million.
Right. He's taxed on the sales price. But in your dad's case, because your dad unfortunately is a widower, what happens is he'll get $250,000 plus his basis
as his exclusion.
Exactly, and anything over that would be capital.
But he took a loan out against the value of the property. It didn't decrease the value of the property simply by having the loan.
So it's not free cash. I keep telling him.
Right.
And you know what else?
Well, it's not free because they charge you an interest rate.
That's right. We'll see you next week.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Be listening next week at 9 for more straight talk on retirement with your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.